In this video, we'll discuss the features on iShowSpeed's face that point to a capacity to be sharp with words, as well as a strongly instinctual and spontaneous nature. Enjoy. Welcome back, everyone. For today's face reading, we're looking at a young American YouTuber and online streamer named iShowSpeed. I found him not that long ago, but he's incredibly popular, like really popular online. He's got, I don't know how many millions of followers, but he's a gifted athlete, and he's well known for a lot of his energetic and kind of dramatic reactions to many things. He's done a lot of collaborations with big-time YouTubers like Mr. Beast and whatnot. Recently, also raced Ashton Hall. If you haven't checked that out, it's kind of a train wreck. He beat him fair and square 4 times, and this other guy, Ashton, did not take it very well at all. Was not a good look. Anyway, he's been in the press a lot because of this. So I wanted to do a quick breakdown of his facial features because he's got some interesting proportions that I think are interesting to talk about in relation to face reading. I will say this also, in the Eastern face reading context, you're not supposed to read someone technically until they're 25. And that doesn't mean by me reading his face, he's only 20. So by me reading his face, does this mean he'll be cursed or that the Eastern gods are going to, strike him down or I'm going to get bad karma? That's not what it means. What they're saying is you shouldn't read someone's face until they're 25 because up until the age of 25, the person's face is primarily expressing, or I should say is expressing more of the energy of the parents, the mom and the dad. That's more what's happening with the face. And then at 25 is where we start really crafting and creating our face based off of our own unique signature. So I will read him again when he's 25. So I want to just have that caveat in here. There's wiggle room. His face is still growing in terms of facial development theory, according to this Eastern lens. So with all of that being said, if you're new to my channel, welcome. But please go up here and watch the 5-minute crash course face reading video on face reading. That will give you some terms and terminology, what face reading is and isn't. And the big overarching theme and the big takeaway is that face reading is a branch of Chinese medicine. So if you don't watch that video and you don't pick those terms up, you might be a bit lost in this video. The proportions that I found very interesting on his face, we're going to talk about the 3 sectors first. So you've heard me talk about this in other videos, but in face reading theory, they break the face down into 3 sectors, and it goes from the top of the hairline to the eyebrows. That's sector 1. And then from the eyebrows to the bottom of the nose is sector 2. And then from the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin is sector 3. The height of these spaces relates to how certain aspects of our personality express. So the upper one is relating to the mental sphere, sort of the mental logistical stuff that we think about. The middle sphere, the eyebrow to the bottom of the nose, that height relates to practicality and pragmatism. And then the bottom one, sector 3, from the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin, relates to emotional and instinctual, the emotional and instinctual side of our nature. So the more height we have in these areas, they say more energy is allocated into those departments, depending on those ratios. What I found interesting about his face is that his middle sector, his practicality sector, is compressed. This can be read 2 different ways. One layer is he's got a compressed middle, practical, pragmatic center. The mental sphere is a little bit bigger, and then the emotional and instinctual is noticeably longer. And so what this means in face reading theory is this first layer is a person should operate from their emotions and their instinctual responses. Given his line of work, what he's doing, YouTubing, online streaming, the spontaneity component of how he develops his content and how he reacts to things, there is something highly spontaneous and highly reactive about what he does. And so his features really point to this layout in terms of personality. He's sort of fulfilling the thing that his face carries, which is great. That's really important in face reading theory because the basic idea is that form and function relate. If you have these features and you have certain ratios, certain elemental proclivities, you need to play to them. That's what keeps our life force strong, and he is doing that. So again, emotional and instinctual is large and dominant. So this also relates to decision making. So this will point to how our personalities express, but when we see these sectors, what this means is in terms of decision making, iShowSpeed here should definitely go from the emotional and instinctual. He should use his gut response for most things. Second to that would be logistical thinking, like the details, right? That second sector, which is a little bit bigger, That's his next biggest one. That means like the details, just like how do things go. And the last one is practical, which means things don't necessarily need to be practical for him to feel comfortable in doing what he's doing. It's better if he plays to his emotions and his instincts. Now, the other way this can read, and again, he's only 20, so his face isn't developed. He's not into that full maturation quite yet. The other way this can read is that when this sector is compressed, it can almost be like a compression and a squeezing out of pragmatism, which means that the pragmatism is actually being extracted even more out of a person. So I've seen this in certain people's faces when I've worked with clients where they've got a long lower sector, but this area is compressed and they're actually highly practical. And what it means is that these two upper centers are essentially squeezing out or extracting the pragmatism from the face. So again, he's not a private client. I would have to work with him and talk to him. I probably never will, but I would be talking to him about that and saying, so usually it goes these two ways. Which one are you leaning towards? And then from there, you can kind of structure lifestyle guidance to have a person live longer and healthier. So that's one. The ratios are very interesting there. The other thing that I thought was interesting about his face is that he's got these really sharp innercanthus on his eyes. The innercanthus are these points right here. The points on the outside of the eye are the outer canthus. When we see that, okay, the innercanthus, this relates to the sharpness of the spoken word. Now you might be going like, why? Why is that the case? The reason for that is that in face reading theory, the eyes are seen as the gateway or the portal to the soul of a person, the consciousness of a person. You can read a lot in a person's eyes. That being said, how do we express what comes from the mind? How do we get our thoughts out? Unless you're telepathic and can read minds, we do it through speech. So there's a relationship between the shaping of the eyes and the spoken word, because this is reflective of the mind, and how we get the mind out is through words. When we see those sharp points on the innercanthus, this points to a nature where a person can be highly cutting with their words. They have to be very careful in their interpersonal relationships and in their business dealings to not overcut. Those sharp points basically mean sharp words coming out of the mind. Usually a person is very articulate when they have these. They can really riff and rhyme and just go with the flow in terms of wording and get things out. I've watched some of his content, so there's nothing psychic or predictive about what I'm saying here. I've watched some of his content. He is incredibly sharp with his words. He's very able to be very nice, but should someone talk shit in any capacity, he has no trouble just flipping that script, doing the Uno reverse card, and going in full tilt. So again, that's something to moderate if you carry this feature. It's a good thing to be sharp with your words, but you have to learn how to temper it like anything. And again, what I would say for him is, in the public sphere, this is going to be great for him. It's in interpersonal relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, where you really have to watch this trait and be careful with it. But like anything, any aptitude that we have, there's a strength and a weakness to it. So that's something I would be talking to him about. The last piece I'll talk about is just the dominance of his core features. The core features are the eyes, nose, and mouth. Okay, this is sort of the central triangle of the face. They're very dominant. He's got really powerful, strong eyes. He's got a dominant nose. He's got a full mouth, which is an earth element feature, which relates to expression and feeling. And then he's also got dominant eyebrows and action-oriented eyebrows. So when the eyebrows check like this, when they go up and they go down, that's a person who is action-oriented and decisive by nature, typically, and they need to play to that. And if they're not wielding that, if a person is not going down that road, I, as the face reader, if they were my client, would be saying, you might want to be a bit more action-oriented. Again, watching his content, seeing what he's doing, he's following suit. His facial features are definitely indicative of how he is living, and I say that's a good thing. That's, I think part of that's why he's doing so well on his YouTube content creation. All the things that he does is because he's using the feature that his face carries. So pretty interesting. Again, he's young, and he's cocky, and he's got a lot of bravado, and for what it's worth, at 20, it's like, if you're going to be that way, that's the right time to do it. Like, be cocky through your 20s. It's all about yourself and learning what works and what doesn't. It's all identity centered. And then usually in your 30s, you just start to simmer. But I'll have a better read of his face when he's 25. But in any case, these are the primary things I wanted to talk about his face. If you guys have any questions, please put them down below. And if there's anyone else you'd like me to read, please let me know. Thanks.